Welcome back to the news, taking you to the Colombo Stock Exchange. Now, the bourse witnessed yet another day of gains as investors confidently rallied with interest on LOFC, which led the market today as investors reacted positively on the news of the amalgamation of LOFC with NIFL. Now, the main index moved on an upbeat sentiment throughout the day and remained high despite slight fluctuations as the buying spree picked up and closed for the day at 9,366, gaining 50 points. Turnover continued to record a healthy level of 4.1 billion rupees, with transportation sector and the diversified financial sector led the overall turnover with a joint contribution of 39%. Market saw a net foreign inflow of 647 million rupees during the day. The bourse has seen a net foreign inflow of 1.85 billion rupees so far this year. And now, with the ongoing developments in Sri Lanka, a staff-level agreement reached with the global lender IMF. Sri Lanka's stock market's forecast is something we have been talking about. There has been an upward trajectory. There has been stocks gaining and ending in green territory. But to discuss the way forward and what is expected in the markets, the forecast and the outlook, we've invited to our studios the chairman of the Colombo Stock Exchange, Dilshan Wirasekara. A very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, India. It's good to be here.
So you've taken over as chairman since June, and we've seen a tremendous shift in policy stance in Sri Lanka during this period, a volatile situation, and now the latest, finally, the global lender, the Washington-based global lender, has agreed to extend a $3.9 billion or $2.9 billion bailout package to Sri Lanka. But what does this mean to the Colombo Stock Exchange going forward and the appeal for foreign investors?
Sure. So I think the IMF agreement means a lot for the entire country, economic-wise. I think a lot of what we had planned in terms of whether it be debt restructuring, foreign investment, all of that, the cornerstone would remain the IMF package. So I think it acts very positively, not only for the Colombo Stock Exchange, but for the economy in general. And we hope that this would be a catalyst for other bilateral lenders, multilateral lenders, or even investors to take comfort that now Sri Lanka has passed through the worst and is heading towards stability. So I would think that it means a lot, and it would be taken as a big positive for capital markets in general.
In terms of the fluctuation of the market, we saw changes, we saw several ups and downs over a period of time. So how would you see, how would you explain this to us, and what is the outlook for the Colombo Stock Exchange?
So I think it mirrors the economic crisis that we went through in the Ivory. So if you trace back and look, the market did extremely well in 2021. It peaked in January of this year, and obviously thereafter we had the economic crisis unraveling, where we defaulted on our foreign debt obligations. Thereafter we had political turmoil, not having a stable government in place, and transition through those protests to finally having an established government, a new president, and sort of stability in general. So I think the market mirrored that. It wasn't anything in particular. Market mirrored that. The market touched the 13,000 on the all share price index in January, an all-time high. Market cap was 5.5 trillion rupees. And then you had 4 or 5 months of bad performance that mirrored the crisis. The index fell to, I think, a little under 7,000. So we had about a almost 50% reversal from the peaks that we saw in the early part of the year. But I think the reason for that was that we went through the worst economic crisis that this country has seen post-independence. And now that we've got some stability, we've done certain changes, both from a macro perspective, from a fiscal perspective. We've depreciated the currency, we've hiked interest rates, we are pricing commodities properly, fuel, electricity. We have a new government in place. We've appointed a debt restructuring team, and now finally we've got an IMF bailout package. So I think the market is just reflecting
that. So what
that.
changes do you expect to introduce at the Colombo Bourse?
So I think we are going to continue with what we've been doing. So we've had a strategic plan to the stock exchange looking at the next 5 years. We are not thinking of doing anything differently given the context of the IMF package, but we were doing that already in place. So we've sort of looked at broad basing, making the capital markets accessible to all Sri Lankans. We've done that over the last 3-4 years. We'll try to do more of that. We currently have about 750,000-800,000 CDS account holders, but only about 60,000 of them really trade the market on a regular basis. So our objective is to broad base that. We want to introduce technology, new products. We are still a dual product market. We have equity, we have listed debt. We need much more products. We need commodities, we need derivatives, we need ways investors can hedge themselves. So we are doing all of these things, developing the infrastructure, broad basing the investor base, and finally looking at getting more issuers to come on the exchange and have a market that really represents the broader economy than otherwise.
But how would you address the question of literacy, which is still very low?
So I think it's financial literacy that's low. Unfortunately, our school curriculum doesn't really educate our youngsters about financial markets when you come out. So you're not that savvy. We've been lobbying with the Ministry of Education, all of that, to try and bring in capital markets, invest education as part of the school curriculum. That will be the longer term solution. But on our own, the Colombo Stock Exchange does conduct a lot of programs, even regionally to schools, other bodies, to increase awareness and make investors more savvy about investment in capital markets.
A big question now discussed and given a lot of attention is the state-owned enterprise segment, which needs to be revived, restructured, with a larger population coming on board to say, no, we will not pay taxes to sustain these loss-making entities. But for a long time, I've discussed with your previous chairman as well, who has been talking about bringing loss-making entities as the SOE to be listed on the Colombo Stock Exchange. So how will you work with the restructure plan of the government, private-public partnerships to enable this?
So I think that's really a call the government needs to make. What we have done is we have a market that's ready to list these publics. We have the only market infrastructure in Sri Lanka that can provide a platform for these companies to be listed. And part of the issue of everyone saying, these SOEs aren't profitable, they're a burden on public, I think a good way is to list them because you're publicly accountable. All the listed companies on the Colombo Stock Exchange need to publish their financial, need to have audited accounts, need to be accountable to shareholders. And I think that concept, if that can be brought in even for the state-owned enterprises, that itself will solve the problem. But like I said, that's a decision for the government to take. We as the exchange have a platform that's ready to be able to do that.
Thank you very much for your time here at First and Nine. We had with us the chairman of the Colombo Stock Exchange, Dilshan Wirasekara, joining us tonight.
Thank you.